So, welcome everyone, and thanks for joining. To those that I know and those that I don't, it's really, really good to have you guys here. The first thing I need to remind us all, because some of us are here in Israel, but some aren't. So, I'll say we're still under war here, and my area has been very quiet for the past 10 days, but we did have an alarm this morning. So I need to say that if there'll be an alarm here, I'll need to go to the shelter, which is in the next room, for a few minutes. And I have a few friends here online to keep you company and talk during that time, if that'll happen. But let's hope that they'll give us quiet for the next 90 minutes. And we're talking about the situational behavior interview method. I'll introduce myself a bit, but I can tell you I'm really, really excited to do this session today. I've been teaching this method in Israel for the past 18 years, a bit more than 18 years now. And I do it. I always joke that it's the only thing that I've been teaching for more than 18 years. And I'm usually a person that gets very bored with things. So for me to do the same class, to facilitate the same class for such a long period, means that this is both very important for me and that it's challenging and interesting. And the main thing that makes it so challenging and so interesting is that I really believe that interviewing people changes their lives. I don't know about you, but I know people that work in companies for 20, 30 or something years. I know I was interviewed only twice in my life. I'll share my quick bio here. I've been with HR and recruiting world for 26 years now. My first 9 years were at Intel in Fab 18, the first fab to build in the southern part of Israel. And when I joined there, I was interviewed. I had 2 interviews, and actually those were the only interviews I ever had in my lifetime, because when I left Intel, I became a freelancer, and I started building my own company, and I never had to be formally interviewed to be hired. But these 2 interviews really changed my life. When I went to Intel, I joined for a temp job. I even had a temp yellow badge and not the Intel blue badge. And I was supposed to be there for only 6 months, but I stayed there for 9 years. The temporary became the permanent. And I see these interviews today as really changing my life. My life course. I didn't know anything about HR or about working in companies and organizations. And that was the first chance I got. And I give a lot of credit to the managers that hired me then for identifying that I'll be good for the job and for hiring me later into Intel. Since I left Intel in 2006, I've been teaching and working with recruiters, like I said, for over 18 years now. And the workshop, when I left Intel, I started giving this workshop. It's not a method that I invented. It's you can see it in a lot of research. It's been the recognized as the best interview method in terms of validity and reliability. We'll talk a bit about it later. For more than 20 years now. But when I left Intel, I realized that not a lot of people know it. In the US, they teach it sometimes as the STAR method. I'll talk a bit later about the differences between the situational behavior and the behavioral method, the STAR method. And I've been teaching almost only in Israel. COVID did me a lot of good by moving the sessions to Zoom and to online. I've been working in the past 3 years and gave a lot of sessions online. And I had the opportunity to teach a lot of global teams from North America and EMEA and APAC. But I wanted to share with you that after hundreds of Hebrew webinars and podcasts, and this is my first webinar in English, and the first time I had to reach out and I wanted to reach out and invite people that aren't from companies in Israel. So I'm very, very excited to have all of you here, and I appreciate your joining me today. People here that know me from Israel know that I'm always happy to answer any questions during the session. So we're not a big group here, but I really want you to feel free to open your mic or write in the chat. And if I say something that doesn't make sense or that that you have really any question, just feel free to stop me. We're recording this session, and I'll share with you both the recording, the video, and the PowerPoint. So you can obviously record or take any picture that you want, and I'll share it with you later so you can forward it or share it with others. Really, my main purpose is to give you a tool that will help you interview better. So from my side, the more you pass it along to other friends, my purpose will be met. And I wanted to start by a very quick poll, and I wanted to ask you, how easy is it for you to decide yes or no in the end of an interview? Let's see if that's the first time I use the poll here. So you're supposed to be seeing the poll. Do you see the poll in front of you? Okay. Wonderful. So let's take, 30 seconds to answer. Just mark one answer down. Let's take 10 more seconds if you didn't write it down yet. Okay. So just to share the results, really interesting. 42% say it's so-so, 33% say it's easy, and 25% say it's hard. And we're a small group, about 12 people voted. So if I go back to statistics from a bigger crowd, when I asked 104 people, 104 managers, it was a similar, maybe a bit more balanced towards the easier part. But the thing I think that's common to most people that I ask is that almost no one says it's real easy. This is from 104 answers and surveys that I share with different managers, different groups of managers. And you can see that most of us, both in HR and in the different managerial roles, don't feel very comfortable making a decision. It's not so easy for us to make a decision in the end of the interview. Now, I said up front that I think interviews change lives, so I don't think it should be, the best comparison would be Tinder. I don't think it should be a swipe to the left or swipe to the right. It's not something that we should take lightheartedly or to make a decision that's not based on facts. But it should be easier if we know how to collect the right facts, if we know how to base our decision on facts and real events. And my goal today is to give you a professional method, a way to prepare and to conduct the interview so that you can identify the skills and the potential of candidates, even if they didn't come from a standard background, even if they tried to move from one industry to the other. I don't know if you know this, but during the 2-3 years of COVID, 65% of the people that resigned didn't joined or didn't stay in the same industry that they started, or they started developing their career. So we see today in many workplaces movement from people coming from a non-standard background. So we need to know how to identify their skills, interview them to understand their potential. And we want to reduce the gap between what we see in the interview and what we see later. We want to see the interview really giving us tools or giving us the best basis to make a decision, to decide if the person that we meet is the right fit. And just to connect it to the situation, job opening versus unemployment globally, if you look at the US, the most interesting thing in the US in the past year is that for the first time in almost 20 years, there's more job openings than unemployed people. And it just means that the recruiting or the hiring role is more difficult. Now, you may have heard that there's more unemployment, or there are more people that are available. You can see that the picture in the UK is very similar. But if you look at the unemployment rates in the US and in Europe, even in Japan, it's almost on the 3% border, let's call it, which is the lowest border for unemployment. It's the 3% line is the amount of people that are moving from one position to the other. So we have a very high number of job openings. Even if they're decreasing, they're still higher than the number of unemployed people, which means that even if all the unemployed people will fill all the job openings, which is obviously not the case in most situations, because people are unemployed mainly because they're missing some of the needed qualifications. But even if all the unemployed people fill all job openings, we'd still have open positions in the US and globally. Sorry, my dog here is excited by the news. So I want to ask you, how long does it take for you to do a, excuse me. Sorry. I wanted to ask you how long it takes you to do a typical HR interview, to do a professional interview. How long does it take you? You can write it down. I can tell you that, okay, 45 minutes.
1 hour.
1 hour, 45. Okay. Great. So it's somewhere between 45 seems to be the common denominator, somewhere between 45 to an hour. Wonderful. So thank you for sharing. In Israel, I hear somewhere between 30 to 60 minutes. So I'm glad to see that most of you did around 45. Never did. Okay. So Alexandra, I'll be more than interested to know if this helps you in your first interview. So write to me after that. So if we take, just for example, let's say you invest an hour in an interview, and we take someone that their salary per month is $10,000, and the person will work with us for only 2 years. It means that in an hour, we're making a decision that has the impact that's worth $240,000. If I take 10,000 and double it by 24 months, it means we're making a decision that's worth almost $250,000 in an hour, which, if it came from my own pocket, would usually not be a decision that I'll invest an hour in it. Now, maybe you'll tell me that other people are also interviewing, and it's not your decision alone, which is all true. But if you're the person signing the check, your signature is worth $240,000. And if you invest an hour in the interview, it means every minute is worth $4,000. I'm starting with the impact of the interview and the financial impact, because I think most of us don't look at the decision that we make in every interview as a decision that's worth $250,000. We don't feel it. We're not aware of it. As far as the weight on our shoulders. And some people tell me, okay, but not every person stays 2 years, which is true. So we need to add to this the cost of replacing an employee. The cost of replacing an employee is somewhere between 1.5 months' salary at minimum, and up to 1 to 4 annual salaries. In average, a recent article that I found says that an average is 3 months' salary. That's the average cost of replacing an employee. We can add to it the impact the person has the team, the plus and the minus, the impact that they have, the good impact, if they're salespeople or they're manufacturing, the good and the bad impact that they have on the team, the customers. If we didn't hire the person and they're walking around as some sort of ambassador, telling other people how it felt, how was their employer, the candidate experience with us as employers? Was it good or bad? Did they want to come and work with us or not? So every interview minute leads to thousands of dollars expense, at minimum only the $4,000, the salary divided by the number of minutes, but it can grow to a lot more. And I start with this because I think we need to understand the impact that this event, the interview, has, like I started saying, by impacting the people's lives as well as impacting the company, because the salary that we're paying the employees in the company is the biggest expense in almost every company. That's the biggest expense we have. You can see that whenever a company wants to save money, this starts by terminating and letting people go. That's a good way to save money. Now, I didn't say that to make you scared. I'm sorry if I did, Alexandra. I think the main thing I want to give you today is how to prepare for this event, because that's our role. For each of us in each role, we make an impact on the company. And my purpose is to give you tools to approach this position, this very short amount of time that has such a big impact in the best professional way that you can. So I want to give you tools so that you won't be afraid, even just because you'll be a bit more ready for it. When I ask managers and HR teams, how did you learn to interview? And we had a quick chat with those that were here first, and I hear a lot. And the HR manager I chatted with before said she didn't do any interview training. So I'm really glad you're here. But you're not alone. Many of the HR managers and managers in general say that they sat with their manager and learned from her, from him. I hear people saying, I read an article about how a CEO that I admire interviews, and I took questions from there. ChatGPT, by the way, is a source that a lot of people go to these days. People say that they do it intuitively because they've got a lot of intuition, or they learn it on the go. As they went along, they interviewed people, and from there they learned. Netta is a good friend, and actually I think you were one of the first sessions, right? Thanks, Netta.
Yeah, and this is why I said to Lindsay, believe me, it's going to be high quality training. And by the way, actually we implemented IDOMO. We do trainings to managers, and it's based on your methodology that we are now working here. Yeah.
Wow, it's so good to hear that. I think for me, the most exciting thing is that people that learned from me 10 or 15 years ago are still using the tools. It means it works. So thanks, Netta, for sharing that. It is really exciting for me. And I think the what doesn't cease to wonder me is that every CEO, every public speaker, it's one of the things people love to share their best interview question. I actually got a mail this week. I thought it was a good, event, or it was funny that it happened this week. I got a mail from Simon Sinek that I read. I'm sure you know him, a public speaker, talks about Start With Why. And one of the mails that he shared this week with his community is the one question you should ask in an interview. And the question is, I hate surprises. Can you tell me something that might go wrong now that I'm not surprised when it happens? Which is an interesting question. He invented it, but it has nothing to do with valid questions in an interview. Or another question that Richard Branson, which is Virgin Media's founder, his favorite interview question is, what didn't you get a chance to include in your resume? Which is a question a lot of people share with me as a favorite question. And I can give you a lot of articles like that with CEOs in Israel. What did your nanny in the kindergarten, what would she say about you if I asked her? And other questions like that you can find from very respectable CEOs. And both Simon Sinek and Richard Branson are people I admire as the managers that they are. And the public speakers that they are, but both of these questions are not good, let's call it research-based or academically based. They have good intuition about them, and they've learned how to use this question, and both of them are people persons. So I'm guessing that the questions really gave them a lot of information, and together with who they are personally, maybe it helped them. But for me and you to use these questions, we don't have any tool to use them, and we don't have anything except for our good intuition to base our decision on it. And people ask me, so don't you believe in intuition? And I usually ask back, would you agree that a doctor would operate on you intuitively, or that an architect would build your house intuitively? And with these questions, it seems ridiculous. Of course not. I'd want my doctor to go and to learn because they have my life in their hands, or the architect that they're building buildings. We see what happens when you build a building that's not built correctly. It can fall apart and people's lives can be hurt. And people's lives can be hurt and are hurt every day by interviews that are done unprofessionally or intuitively. Because intuition has a lot of bias. Intuition has a lot of mistakes, leads us to a lot of mistakes. And there is a professional way that can help us make better decisions. So why work intuitively if I can do it more professionally? And I really, I've got a hard time understanding why it is the common practice for many years to interview intuitively, when for over 20 years, we know there's a good method. We know there's a good way to do it. There's a proven way to do it. And still, till this day, most managers don't interview professionally. When I ask managers, and it's the same 104, 105 managers that I showed you before, when I asked that group, which of the following questions do you usually ask during an interview? This was the responses that I got. Most managers, and you see more than 80%, start the interview with, tell me a bit about yourself, which is a very, very open question. And each of us start to dig or start to fish from that answer the things that are interesting to us, but it's too big, it's too wide, and people prepare for it. People sit at home with ChatGPT and prepare a speech and come to the interview and read out or read from their memory what they have a bit to tell about themselves. But anything that we can practice ahead of time, I don't see it as a good answer, and it doesn't really tell us enough about them, more than the CV that we have in front of us. And if it wastes 5 or 10 minutes and we put a $4,000 amount on each minute, so it's about $20,000 to $40,000 waste of our time. So let's try and use those 5-10 minutes a lot better, and I'll give you better opening questions. Even if you only ask, tell me a bit about what you did in your previous job, it'll be a better opening question instead of this. Or tell me what, if I'm interviewing someone for a service position, asking, tell me a bit about the last service position that you did, your previous position in service would be a better question than tell me a bit about yourself, which is too open, too big, and a real waste of our time. You can see the color markings that I did here. So the pink questions are questions that managers or interviewers ask to learn about the person's motivation. What do you know about us? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Why do you want to work for us? But the thing is, these are motivational questions that check the motivation for the interview. Do I really want to be hired for this company? And the fact is that you can have someone that's perfect for the job, but they don't know it, and they don't really practice for it, and they don't really want to work in your company. They don't care less if it's your company or the next, but they're perfect for the job, but they just don't know it yet. And on the other hand, you can have someone who's been practicing for a whole week, reading everything there is to know about the company, but they're not a good fit for the job, because preparing for the interview and knowing everything there is to know about the company is not related at one bit to the motivation for the job. You want to check the motivation for the job, and I'll try, if we have enough time, I'll try and talk a bit about how do you check motivation for the job. The blue questions are questions about the future. What would it feel like if you have to do this or do that? What would your previous manager tell you if I asked about you? And all the questions about the future, we want to ask them about the past, and I'll explain it a bit in a second. The main, I'll show it in a second, the main understanding in situational behavior interviews that we're looking at past behavior in specific situations to predict from them the future. So any question about the future is a question we want to turn around to ask about the past. We're going to try and move towards questions like number 5 here, which is asking about a conflict with a previous manager, a problem that you needed to fix. Anything that is in the past in a specific situation would be the best questions to go to. But like you can see, not all managers or not all interviews typically go to that type of questions. I'll stop here and see if you have any questions, because I know many of these are questions that people use daily. So if you have any thoughts or any questions, and I've been talking for too long, so. Any thought or any question? And if not, I'll move on, which is okay. Okay. So our goal is to be accurate and to gather facts to make professional decisions. And like I said, the situational behavior is a method that is both has a higher score for validity. When we talk about predictive validity, it's the connection that we find between what we see in the interview and what we see later in the workplace. Like I said, we're trying to shorten or minimize the gap between what we see in the interview and what we see later in the workplace. It's a reliable method because we build a questionnaire that enables consistency to create some sort of an index that even if 3 different interviewers interview, they'll all reach a similar decision based on the questionnaire that we've prepared in advance. And we know from surveys that this method to interview people gets excellent feedback on the candidate experience. People enjoy talking about their history, talking about examples from their previous work experience. And so I'll dive into what it means to interview people in this method. And when we try to to understand what are people's past behavior, we look at how our brain connects between behavior and situations. And our brain is connecting triggers to responses. For example, if you drive a car and you see the street light turning red, our leg automatically goes to the brake. We step on the brake to stop the car. So our brain is connecting the trigger to the response. Research usually calls it if this, then that. It's like an action switch that when we push a button, it elicits a response. Instead of calling this the trigger, we can look at it at the situation. The situation that we encounter leads to a behavior. A situation can be something external, like the red street light. It can be someone behaving in a certain way next to me, or a problem in the factory that I'm trying to handle. And it can be something internal. Something scares me, something makes me happy. It elicits a behavior, an automatic response. So I want to ask you, let's see some examples from your life. In the situation of waking up in the morning, what do you do every morning after you wake up? If you can write for us. What do you do every morning when you wake up? It's not a trick question. It's, take my cell and check the news, check my phone. Okay. Make coffee. Thanks, Jess. So we make coffee, we check our phone, we take a shower, brush our teeth, right? Like you see, exactly, get a shower. I take my dogs out or they'll kill me. Okay, so our automatic, for each of us, there's a different scenario, but we all have an automatic response or a schedule in the morning that's elicited from just waking up, opening our eyes, send our hand to the phone, going to the shower. Even if you look at the process you go through in the shower, most of us have a similar process. How we can even do it with our eyes closed, you know, put our hand into the soap or to the shampoo, how we wash our body. It's usually the same process every day. And even if we woke up in a different country, in a different room, we'd go through the same motion, the same process. So what's your automatic evening ritual? What do you do every evening before you go to sleep? Set the alarm, great. Take my dogs out, yeah, I'm with you. Saying thanks, wow. Saying thanks for things I have in life. Take out my contacts. Okay, take out my contacts. That's a good one. Thanks, Lindsay. People tell me that they watch Netflix, go to bed with a phone, do some stretches, brush your teeth, wash our face. Exactly. Okay. So what are the things, what behaviors have you been telling yourself? Tomorrow, I'll stop doing this. For a long time, you've been telling yourself, tomorrow, I'll stop doing this. Or tomorrow, I'll start doing that, but you still haven't started, you know, like the New Year's resolution or the daily resolution. Stop checking for a phone first thing. Stop smoking cigarettes with a coffee. Start taking walks outside. Wonderful. Thank you. Stop taking my phone first thing in the morning. Oh, yes. Start exercising, doing sports. Wonderful. So we always tell ourselves, you know, I don't have enough willpower and I don't have enough, you know, I don't push myself enough, because if I did, I'll start doing sports. But it's not true. Actually, 40% of our day-to-day actions are directed from our subconscious, are like an autopilot, because there's connection in our brain, actually neural connection in our brain, connecting the situation and the behavior. And as long as we have some sort of ritual that we're already ready for it, in order to introduce a new one to our body, we really need to work on it for a long period until a new neural connection is created. So it's not something that we just don't have enough willpower. It's actually our brain preventing us, and we need to force our brain in a way to learn. In the past, they used to talk about 21 days to learn a new ritual or new habit. Today, I read articles about 66 days to introduce a new habit into our lives. And Alexandra wrote about the cigarette. Cigarette has also the physical part of getting the nicotine out of your brain, out of your body, sorry, in addition to learning the new habit of or disconnecting the connection that you have today between coffee and cigarettes. With cigarettes, it's real easy to show because many people have connected cigarettes to coffee or to food or after food, or like our examples with the phone, right? When we wake up, we take the phone. So it's so connected that we need a lot of time to try and disconnect it and to get it out of our lives. By the way, the one thing that, or there are two things that can help us make changes a lot quicker, and that's traumatic or life-changing events. I hear from people that went through car accidents that after the car accident, they keep looking, from the side that the accident happened, or pulling their handbrakes. I had a woman that told me about a car that she forgot to pull up the handbrake. So today she checks on it almost like an OCD. And I can see with myself today in Israel, after almost a month of the war going on, I've been without TV and without watching the news on a daily basis for almost 7 years now. And from the first day of the war in Israel, I've been watching the news, I don't know, almost nonstop for 7/24. So I can tell you that when there's something very traumatic that we go through, and on the other hand, I said it's life-changing events. I heard parents telling me that when their child was born, they started hearing better at night. They used to sleep through the night, and suddenly every small noise makes them wake up. So 40% of our actions are on autopilot. The good thing about this is that when we look at candidates' past behavior, it's some sort of proof or record that we can trust when we want to predict their behaviors. So the situational behavior method is the standardized method based on the premise that candidates' past behavior in specific situations is the best predictor for future behavior in similar situations. So when we're preparing for the interview, we want to look at the future position. We want to understand what's going to be the future situations so that we can ask the candidate, were you ever in such a situation? What did you do? And we want to learn about their past behavior in these specific situations so we can get to know their autopilots, their automatic behavior, their automatic responses, because that's the part that we can predict. Like I said, in one of my sessions, participants said, so why are we looking at the 40%? Why aren't we looking at the 60%? But the fact is that the 60% are not predictable. We can't predict at times how we'll behave when different things happen. There's a lot of things. It's one of the hardest things in the world is to predict human behavior. Actually, some of the Nobel Prizes, like for example, Kahneman and Tversky got, was for predicting human behavior. So predicting human behavior isn't very easy. The only way or the only information that we have that's valid, that we can trust, is our past behavior, because that's where we're going to start. So that's going to be the basis for any human behavior, is how we behaved in the past in specific situations. So we're trying to use a very short amount of time, an hour, to understand what the person's behavior is going to, what the person's behavior was in the past in situations that are similar to what's going to happen tomorrow when they go into the new role, but they don't know the new role yet. They don't know our company. They don't know how things go in your company. So our job when we prepare the questionnaire is to build very, very specific questions that will elicit very specific examples about past behavior in specific situations that are predicting future behavior in similar situations. So I want to stop and ask you if it makes sense. Does it connect to how you interview today, or if anywhere it doesn't make sense? Is it similar to how you interview today, asking about past behavior in similar situations? Sure. Hey, God, how are you? Okay. I can tell you that some managers tell me that it's strange, or they feel that it's too tough, meaning that we're like robots. If we did something in the past, it doesn't mean we'll always do it in the future. And I do believe that we have infinite potential for development, but the interview is a point in time that we can't go and ask, so what do you think you would do different? Or what do you think you'll do in this situation in the future? And a lot of us are very, it's a question that we go to. Asking about the future is a question that many of us go to. But what the person brought with them to this point is what we can trust, is what their experience brings. It's what they already have knowledge about how to behave. Even when we're asking young people or people with less experience, we want to ask them about previous examples to learn about their behavior, even if it's not exactly the same type of situation. Jessica is asking, what about the question, how would you have preferred to have handled it? What did you learn from the past behavior? It's a question many interviewers ask. Thanks for this one, Jessica. And let's take what I asked you guys before. What did you want to do different? So a lot of us say that we want to exercise more or go to sleep earlier or not use the phone so much. So if I asked you, how would you prefer to handle, the waking up ritual better? You'd say, many of us would say, I'd exercise first thing, and I'd ignore the phone, or don't look in the news for at least the first hour, and do meditation. I have a lot of ideas about how I want to behave, but it doesn't mean it's the actual behavior. And many times people go with wishful thinking or the New Year's resolution, and we have them with us for years and years and years and years, but we don't put it into practice, into action. So I found that there's a very big gap between what we would have preferred to do or what we learned, which is in our brain, versus what we did, which is the actions that we took. And I'd recommend that you focus the information you gather on the actions that people took, because on actions, if you see an example for actions, you can trust it. If you hear about learning about something or something that's in our brain, it's not something that you can trust. I call it, you're gambling in a way on that person's ability to do what they think they learned. Does that make sense, Jessica?
Sorry, yes, it does. I don't know if you saw me holding up my phone.
I didn't see you. I didn't see you. Sorry. Okay, thanks but I do thank you for the question, because you're right. A lot of us, I think it's a wishful thinking that if someone tells us, I've learned this or I've learned that, then they'll be able to do that. And the fact is that it's not, because I think the best example for me is always, the cigarette boxes always have this alert, don't smoke because it will cause your death, and it causes this and that. There's a lot of alarms on it. And people that smoke know all the risks about smoking, then they still smoke. And all of us know that it's not good for our health to send our hand to the phone even before opening our eyes, but we still do it. So knowing what's the right thing to do and actually doing it is two different things. And that's why I don't like asking, what did you learn? But I do like to ask, did you ever do something different in the past? So give me an example. Okay, you described one example. So can you give me an example that you learned from it and did something different? Do you have another example that you handled a situation like this, but you handled it differently? And then you can see if the person learned, but through their actions, not through their thoughts. Okay. So we want to go, we want to build what's called a semi-structured interview. And it's semi-structured because we're preparing in advance background questions or questions that are structured. And we're going to ask all the candidates the same question. That's the part that's structured. But we're going to keep it semi-structured because the examples that we're going to probe into them, and they're going to be different for each one of the candidates. For the examples that the candidates are going to share is going to be different from for each one of the candidates and for every example. So it's a semi-structured. The structured part is what makes it strong, what makes it valid. And the personal stories and examples are the part that gives us all the details, gives us all the information. And like Gal says, yeah, the managers need to define what's the must-have, not so much from the actions, but from the situation. And I'll go into this in a second. The most important thing as a hiring manager, I agree with you, is aligning with the managers about the job, but it's I'll go into it in a second. Thanks, God, for adding that. So I separated before the situation and the behavior, and I want to give you a few examples of how this looks, a few examples, but I want to have you draw your attention to the fact that the situation is going to be the questions and the behavior is going to be the answers. And for those of you that learned the STAR model, like I said, it's a very common model that's being taught in the US and globally. The STAR model focuses on the behavior. So the question and the answer are both on the behavior, and I separate them because research shows that our behavior is situational behavior. It's very connected to the situation. So the same person can behave very differently in different situations. A situation, like we said before, is the trigger. It elicits the specific response. And for example, you can see one person that responds to a very strict manager in one way and to a very open manager in a different way. And it's the same person. You can see yourself behaving differently with, if you're a parent, with different kids. One kid behaves in a certain way and you'd respond to them in a specific way. And another kid can behave different, even the same way, but something in the connection, something in the specific situation is different with the other child, and you'd respond differently because the situation is very different between each kid. So we want to ask the question about the situation because that's the most objective part that we can touch. The situation doesn't change. If there's a disgruntled customer, they're going to be disgruntled, they're going to be angry, whatever service person is sitting in front of them. If you're hiring for a lawyer's job, we talked before about a law company. So if I'm hiring a lawyer and they need to advocate for someone and stand in front of a judge that doesn't agree with them, then that's going to be the same situation for every lawyer. So I want to ask the lawyer, did you ever face a situation where a judge didn't agree with you? What did you do? I don't want to ask directly about the behavior, and I want to show you a few examples. I asked ChatGPT, like I told you, there's a lot of information in Google and obviously in ChatGPT, and I asked ChatGPT, can you generate me a list of behavioral questions for a managerial job? I'll read to you the question. One of the questions: can you provide an example of how you've successfully motivated your team to achieve a specific goal or meet a tight deadline? So when I marked the successfully motivated, do you think it's a situation or a behavior, successfully motivating someone? It's a behavior, right? Exactly. So in the behavioral questions, the behavior is already part of the question. So if I'm a candidate and I understand that you want to see me successfully motivating my team, all of the answers I'm going to give you are answers about successfully motivating my team. I'm already, in a way, putting the answer in the question. Another way to ask and to lead to the same thing, but without disclosing the answer, would be, did you ever face a tight deadline when you led your team? Can you share a specific example of a tight deadline? What did you do? And then there's a better chance for me to get situation to see how you handle your team. Are you a person that successfully motivates or not? Because I asked the question more objectively. I didn't put in the question the successfully motivating, but I did describe the situation, that the tight deadline, or that there was a problem reaching a specific goal. Okay, so I want the question to be focused on the situation and not about the answer, not about the behavior that I'm looking for. Let's take another example, okay? Describe a situation in which you implemented a process or a strategy that improved team efficiency or productivity. What was the impact of your efforts? So implemented, like before, is the behavior, okay? So here in this situation, I already see that the interviewer is looking for something I implemented. So there's no chance that I'll get answers about a manager not implementing a process or not putting in a process. I wouldn't get these answers even if that's the answers of how this manager would behave. But if I ask, did your team and you ever face an efficiency problem or a productivity problem? What did you do? So I'll be able to see, can you share a specific example? So I always lead, I don't stay with a did you, I don't stay with a yes or no question, but it is the first background question, so that the next probing question would be, okay, so give me a specific example. But I asked about the situation of the efficiency problem or productivity problem. I didn't ask about the behavior of implementing an answer, a process, because that's already the answer that I'm looking for. And if I asked it objectively, maybe some of the answers I'll get would be, yeah, we try to do what we always did before, or I told them that it's not my responsibility, it was the other team's responsibility. So I'll get a better, more connected to the actual behavior of this manager, instead of already telling them in advance that I'm looking for answers where they implemented the process. Does it make sense? Okay. I hope you can see the difference between the behavioral and the situational behavior, because a lot of people learn the STAR model in the US and they're sure that they're asking behavioral questions, good behavioral questions, and they are better than, just general or future type of questions. But the problem with them is that they're already leading to the specific behavior that they want to see, and they're not neutral. I'll give you the third and last example. And that's an example that a lot of managers want to see how you prioritize. And they ask about it directly. Describe a situation in which you had to prioritize multiple tasks or projects to meet an organizational goal. How did you handle the competing demands? And I'm sure you can, from the previous examples, already understand how to ask it. I asked, did you ever face a situation with multiple tasks or organizational processes that clashed, that you couldn't do at the same time, that you realized you can't do at the same time? What did you do? Can you give me a specific example? And I'm looking for specific examples that really took a lot of your time. And I focus on what did you do, not what did the company do. And actually, since all of us in 2023 do a lot of things at the same time, all of us are multitaskers. So it's not so unique like it was in the past. I prefer today not to ask this question, even though many, many managers like it. I usually ask, did you ever do something and something that was not planned suddenly, fell into your schedule or surprised you? Were you ever working on your daily routine or doing something, and suddenly something surprised you, completely threw you off your planned day or course? Then what did you do? And give me the example of something that was the most radical or the most surprising. In Hebrew, there's a word for it, baltam, unprepared, something that you're not prepared for. Did you ever handle something that you weren't prepared for, that surprised you, that changed your whole schedule? What did you do? So I'm describing the situation, but I'm not saying a word about the behavior. Okay, I can elaborate about the situation to help the person go back into their mind, go back into their memory, and draw on their memory. And I didn't say this, but I should remind us all that it's not easy to draw from our memory. It's not easy to remember things. But in a way, when we start remembering things, our memory is very associative. So if I start describing one event, it helps me remember the second and the third. So while I'm describing one event, I'll remember, you'll see people saying, oh yeah, and it reminds me of this, and reminds me of that. So we'll start remembering, our mind will bring up more events as we start describing the first ones. So our job as interviewers is to prepare these background questions, the questions that you see on the right, because they'll help elicit the memory, and then ask more and more probing questions to help the person remember more and more details from that event. So when we build a questionnaire, and this is the preparation part, to summarize the preparation part, we're mapping the situation in the future position, okay? We're mapping the different situations, and we're focusing, by the way, on the most difficult situations. So we're not going to tell me about the typical day. We're not going to the typical events, but we're going to the most difficult, most challenging situations, because for two reasons. One, it's going to be a lot easier to remember handling challenges than just a typical day. We don't remember specific details of typical days, but we do remember specific details of something that we had some strong emotion connected to it. So we're going to the specific situation that the person will have an easier time remembering, and also that the details that we hear are more meaningful. Because if I heard you handling a tough situation, then it's pretty safe to assume that you'll be able to handle a day-to-day situation, a regular situation. But the other way around, it's not so easy to assume. If you handled an easy customer, it doesn't mean that you'll handle a tough customer. But the other way around, I can trust it. So I map the situations, I prepare the background questions, like, did you ever experience this? When did you experience this? Give me a specific example, and another and another. I collect at least 2 or 3 examples for each situation. And the second part of my preparation is to think in advance what would be good answers and what would be bad answers. I want to think in advance, and this tool would help me make the decision. Like I said, my purpose is to have the decision in the end come a lot easier. And the more you invest in thinking in advance, if I ask someone, what did you do when you handled a tough customer? These would be good answers, these would be bad answers. Then when I hear them in the interview, it's a lot easier for me to identify this is a good candidate or this is a bad candidate. So I want to have them map in advance the predicted behaviors, good and bad predicted behaviors. And I'm sharing with you an example. I have this preparation kit for the interview that I give away in my workshops. So this is one of the examples. I took the situation of handling a conflict with a team as a project manager. Usually project managers don't have managerial authority. And I prepared the background question. Did you lead projects with teams that you didn't have managerial authority? In what cases were conflicts? Give me a specific example that you remember for such a conflict. That's the background questions. That's the only questions that we prepare in advance. And I prepared in advance. I thought about different types of answers that people can give me for good behavior and for bad behavior in that situation. And obviously, some of the good answers in one company would be good, and maybe in another company they'd be bad. It's not that something's always good or always bad, but this is the general type of preparation that I want to do. And I want to work with the managers like God wrote before. I want to sit with the managers and ask them about the situations and ask them what would be good answers and what would be bad answers. It's not something that we as HR people, I know some of you are HR and some of you are managers, but HR people aren't supposed to know this by themselves. We're supposed to sit with the managers and think with them what would be good answers, what would be bad answers. If someone talks about their history, talks about their past, what do you want to see? I always say, what don't you want to see? What answers, if you'd hear them, you'd know that this person doesn't make a good candidate or a good potential candidate for the position. So preparing the questions will enable us to go to the interview and to lead it good. Preparing the answers would enable us to make the decision to decide in the end of the interview a lot easier. We started with how easy is it for you to decide at the end of the interview. If you think in advance about the answers, it's going to be about the bad answers, which are the type of answers that most interviewers don't think about in advance. So if you think in advance about what answers would cause you to disqualify this candidate, it'll be a lot easier to make that decision in the end. During the interview, we want to ask a lot of probing questions. We want to ask many, many, many follow-up questions. And this is another thing that's very different than the STAR model. STAR model gives you a list of questions and you go through 1, 2, 3, 4, and you do check, 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 check. You go through all the questions, but you only ask one question, you get the answer, it's a next, next, next. I don't recommend going that way. I recommend focusing on a few situations, usually 4 or 5. Each situation takes about 10 minutes. And for each situation, like I said, I want to collect a few examples. For each example, I ask a lot of follow-up questions. When did this happen? What did you do? And how did they respond? And then what did you say? I ask a lot of very small questions, probing questions, to get all the examples, details, specific details. And when I talk about an example, it's an example that has a specific date and times. Like 2 weeks ago, I sat with this manager in my office. This should be the type of stories or examples that you hear. Not that it matters to me if it was a Monday or a Tuesday, but I want to see that the person is describing something real that happened, a specific event. And I want to collect a few examples because behaving in a specific way in one example doesn't mean that this is my habit. But if I hear 2 or 3 examples and I see that there's a habit, for example, whenever I'm facing a disgruntled customer, I always ask them questions and get them to talk about all the things that got them angry before I start talking about my company's policy. So if this is my habit, I want to see it exemplified in at least 2 or 3 examples before I say, okay, I see this is something that you usually do. I mirror to the candidates what I learned from them. I share it with them to see that I understood them correctly. And you'll be surprised to see that candidates correct you and help you learn about them. They correct us. If I tell a candidate, so did I understand you correctly? Is it true that whenever a customer says this and that, what you usually do is this? And they'd say, yeah, but okay. And there's this ping pong few minutes where I mirror what I learned. I share with them what I learned, and I get their feedback if I understood them correctly or not. And that's a very important part of the interview that I have to say most interviewers don't do. Most of us don't make the conversation in a way transparent. I really recommend being as open, as frank, and as transparent as you can in the interview. A lot of interviewers tell me that it feels like it's a conversation that I'm having with a very good friend, which is wonderful. That's exactly the feeling that you should have, but you should keep in mind that you're leading the interview. You're focused on the examples. You know in advance what situations you want to get their examples for. So it's not just an intuitive conversation with a friend. but focused on the situations, asking for examples. It should feel very comfortable, just like I'm talking with a friend, because you're not trying to persuade them or challenge them or teach them anything. You're just trying to get more and more information, more and more examples about how they behaved in very specific situations, so that you can take their examples and then make the decision. If they'll behave this way in the situation in my company tomorrow, is it good or bad for us? Okay. Questions about the preparation or about the interview itself? Any questions that you have? I've talked so much.
I want to say something. It's not a question, though. I want to share something. A year and a half ago, I brought a Morit to our company because I wanted all the recruiting manager to speak the same language with HR. And we did a workshop of 3 or 4 sessions. And I want to say that one of the managers in Israel, after a session of interview with the candidate that we didn't continue with him, he posted on Glassdoor that the interview, even though he wasn't accepted, that the interview was very professional and he got out of it feeling very good.
Wow.
So I said, wow, it's working. So it really does. So
thank you, Michal.
I just wanted to share that.
I don't think you told me that. That's wonderful.
No.
Thank you. It's wonderful to hear. There's a question. Important to have examples in realistic range of time. I agree with you, Gal. Thank you for adding that. We're looking for examples from the past year or two, not for something very far back. I completely agree with you. And if I try to summarize what we talked about, the before, during, and after, before the interview, we map the situations, we map the expected behavior, and we prepare these background questions. During the interview, we probe into the examples, we collect 2 or 3 examples for each situation, and we build a sort of behavioral profile connected to the specific situations. And later we can compare between the questions, between the answers that we prepared in advance and the answers that we got to enable us to make a better, more informed decision. Paz is asking, would I recommend the hiring manager to also include behavioral? Thanks for this question, Paz. Actually, the managers that I teach, sometimes 100% of their interview is behavioral interview, because behavioral interviews, situational behavior interviews, can be focused on professional situational questions. So if you're, Paz, can you write what position you're hiring for, and I can give an example for that. But thanks for this. I didn't say it, and it's important to say the behavioral questions or the situational behavior questions can touch on professional situation, can touch on interpersonal situations, and can touch on motivational behavior. So developers, for example. Okay, so developers, for example, one of the professional situations that happens to them, tell me if it's something that you hear also from your developers, is that they get very vague instructions from their customers, right? So I can ask developers, did you ever handle a situation that you got very vague requirements from your customer? What did you do? And if I'm a hiring manager and I understand, let's say, writing code, so they can say, I got, very vague requests for this, and I had to write a code. So I say, okay, can you share with me what was the code that you wrote? And why did you write this? So I can connect between the professional questions and the situational behavior questions. And then I don't only see what they know, like an exam would give me, but I can hear from them how they handled what they know. What did they do with their knowledge? So the missing piece from the professional side of the interview, like the test that they give them, the whiteboard test. Can you solve this equation, or can you tell me? Is that type of questions only focuses on what they know, on their mind, on their knowledge, but it doesn't translate to what would they do with this knowledge. And then we hear from a lot of hiring managers, they had all the knowledge, but they didn't translate it into action when they were in the field, when they were in the position. So instead of just doing the professional exam, I recommend to managers to start with a situational behavior, but to focus on professional situations, to focus on questions about how they handled bugs, how they handled vague instructions, how they handled problems with the tool that they were handling, how they handle, different professional problems, challenges in their day-to-day. And that's the work you need to do with the managers prior to the interview. What are the challenges, the professional challenges that you want them to handle? And then ask what would be a good answer and what would be a bad answer from their past. So yes, I would recommend hiring managers, and actually most of the managers I teach on my day-to-day are managers that are learning to ask situational behavior questions. And I can share with you that when I was in Intel, the managers did only behavioral interview or situational behavior. They didn't do any exams to check their knowledge. They only did it through situational behavior interview. We had 2 interviews of 2 managers, and that was the way that we checked for their professional background, because they were asked to answer about it. Is the question, how would your colleague team leader describe in 3 words relevant in interview? Gal says no. I'd recommend losing that question, because it's not a situational behavior, and it has no validity. And it is, Emma, a big waste of your time in my mind. And I think the better question, the better use of your time, in my mind, would be to sit with the managers and to go through the process that we did here. Okay, but you're right that it's a question that a lot of people ask. Okay, and the thing is that it doesn't matter what 3 words people would describe them. In your company, they'd be described differently. Think about the only example that I have from my life right now is a kid. I can see my kid that was in one school, and he didn't enjoy the school or the class. And if you'd ask people, how would you describe my kid? They'd say he's very quiet, he's goofy, we laugh about him, he's strange. And then when he went to a different school, most of the kids were quiet and similar to him, and he's their best friend, and he has friends till this day from that class. So we show out, and we and colleagues and team leaders describe people based on their experience, based on the behavior. You don't know what goes on in their mind. I don't quite understand the background question theme. What qualifies as a background question related to the situation? Yeah, the background questions are focused on the situation. And you can go back to the examples I gave before, but the background questions are mainly, did you ever handle such a situation, and give me an example. So that's where we're leading the background questions. They're very, very tightly connected to the situations we mapped. We're trying to understand, and they start very wide and they focus. So if I'm interviewing someone who is going to be a salesperson, I want to ask them, did you ever do sales? Before I ask them, can you tell me about a difficult customer that you tried to sell to something? So there's not much point in going directly to the situation. Give me an example of a tough sale. So the background questions would be, did you ever do sales? Did you ever handle tough customers? So now can you give me a good situation of handling a tough customer? Okay. Does it help, Alexandra? Have I tried ChatGPT generating situational behavior? Not today, but I did in the past, and I got the behavioral questions. So I'll play with it again. It's a good question. Alexandra, does it help? about the background questions? Oh, now I saw this. Okay, yeah, thank you. So I want to talk for a minute about, thanks for the question, about how you can continue learning, because our time is almost up, how you can continue learning about the situational behavior method with me, you, or your managers and your team. And like I said, I've taught over 16,000 people in the last 18 years, most of them in the classrooms, but some of them in the Zoom. This is one of the Zoom sessions from Sapiens talent acquisition team that I did only recently. When I do the session, it's usually, if it's by Zoom, it's 4 or 6 hours in 2 or 3 sessions of 2 hours in the Zoom. Or if it's face-to-face, it's usually a 5-hour session that I'm with the managers. And I talk about what we did here very quickly, the 1.5 hour. It takes a bit longer to connect a group of managers. Usually they're used to asking different type of questions, so it takes a while for them to understand this rationale. And we go in depth into the 4 types of questions we ask during the interview, the probing questions that I just highlighted here, and the background questions. I do a demo and we do a practice in the longer session. We do a practice that I separate them into the rooms, breakout rooms in the Zoom session, or in the classroom, separating them into pairs. And I go between the pairs or threesomes, and I give feedback to the interviewers about how they're doing it. And we talk about how to identify the professional, the interpersonal, the motivational behavior. So the 3 types of behaviors that we talked about. The motivational behaviors, more the drive that the person has. I show how to check for motivation and the past behavior or past situations that elicited motivation. And we also talk about the bias, the mistakes people make when hiring, because a lot of us are, or all of us are, impacted by our own bias. And we talk about how bias interferes with an interview. We talk about it after learning how to interview. We see where we can go wrong and what we need to avoid. And I always, just like today, give access to the Zoom recording and to the presentation. Like I said, it's important for me for you to be able to share it. So if I teach in your company, it's important for me to give you the recordings and the presentations so you can share it with other managers or people that you want to have this information alive in the company. And I always give my online support after the session per need. It's free on my part. I don't charge for it, because it's really important for me that when I teach a workshop that you still have, that for any questions you can come to me. And I was so excited. I have to share this with you. I was so excited to get this feedback from Daniel, who's the talent acquisition leader in Sapiens North America. And I finished the session with him actually, I think about a week ago. And this is the full feedback, and this is part of it. And he was talking about a good balance between theory and hands-on practice, and said that he felt that I truly want to make him better, or the whole group, which is exactly what I felt. So it was, I'll share with you the presentation if you want to read more, but this is a feedback from a Zoom session. And these are a few more. Sivan in Perimeter is also from a Zoom workshop, and Tehila from MD Clone is also from a Zoom workshop. So I've been teaching, did a full Zoom session. Thanks, Paz. You need to remind me what company you're from, because I don't remember. Thanks for coming for the refresher. And thanks for sharing that. And like you see, I've been working with a lot of companies. Thanks, Jenny. So I want to use our last few minutes to ask any questions. I left my WhatsApp and my LinkedIn profiles if you want to write. Right. Thank you, Paz. Thanks for reminding me. And for the talent work, the whole team went through it. So I'm glad that you were here. Thank you. Any questions, any thoughts, or if you want to just write in the chat if this helped you, if it helped clear something, or if you learned something new. I left my WhatsApp barcode, you can scan it, and my LinkedIn to connect. For any questions, any thought you may have, I'll be really happy to stay in touch with you later on. Thank you, guys. Wow, thank you so much.
Thank you, Morit. It's always good to hear you again. I highly recommend Morit. As I mentioned before, we did a few sessions with her, and she's really the best.
Thank you, Michal. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Sorry, someone wanted to ask something?
This is Lindsay. I was just going to say, is this really your first webinar in English?
It's I did workshops in English, so I had groups that invited me, but it's my first webinar like that for an open crowd. Yeah, I do a lot of webinars, so it's not the first time speaking, but in English.
That's great. It was amazing. So
I'm glad it went through smoothly. I keep losing words. I don't know if you see it. Congrats. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that. Congratulations. Thanks, Lindsay. Thanks a lot. I'm glad it was of value to you guys. And thanks for asking and for participating. You really, I had this fear of being here alone. So I'm glad you were here. And lots of luck to you guys, and share with me any question you have and any thought when you try and work with this. Thanks a lot. Have a great day and night.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Lindsay.
Laila tov.
Laila tov. Bye.